Alright guys, I'm going to be giving you the 5 best starter characters in the game from each class in the game, so they're not all going to be mages. Shout out to Jerry Lewis for the video suggestion idea, and if you have a suggestion for a video, a guide you want to see, then throw it down in the comment section, and let's go ahead and get into it. Starting with the mage class, Anubis is one of the most brain-dead mages in the game. He is super easy to pick up and play and great for new players. Anubis has natural lifesteal built into his kit, allowing him to heal constantly during a fight. And I haven't even started talking about his ultimate yet. His ultimate is a laser beam of death that eviscerates his enemies and does a ridiculous amount of damage for no reason other than he's Anubis. Remember, when in doubt, press your 4 key because that is your win button. And for people who don't play on PC and don't know what your 4 key means, that's your ultimate. So just spam your ultimate off cooldown and you'll just win with Anubis. For building with Anubis, I like to use Bancroft's Talon. It's a very good item and it's awesome. It gives you more magical power and lifesteal the lower your HP is. And I really like using Typhon's Fang because it increases the amount of healing you get from your magical lifesteal, which is really good on Anubis. For Anubis, the only downside I would say he doesn't have an escape, and if you're not too careful with your positioning, you could get easily destroyed by the enemy team. Moving on to the Hunter class, I could 100% recommend Artemis for new players. She is easy to pick up and play. Artemis, like Anubis, has a super annoying ultimate. She summons a pig that stuns anything around her, and it's extremely annoying. You could use your ultimate both offensively and defensively. She also has traps that root your enemies. Most people just place them like landmines and forget about them. But if you want to take your Artemis gameplay to the next level, you could place them as you run away from your enemies. Enemies will be locked on you and won't really be looking where they're stepping, and that's where you could trap them and turn the tables on your enemies. Let's move on to build. When playing Hunter, there are 2 main types of builds, physical penetration and crits. Items for physical penetration I would recommend are Transcendence, Quinsace, and Executioner. If you're going crit, I recommend building Atlantis Bow, Deathbringer, and Wind Demon. Of course, there are some hybrid builds, but just when you're starting out and you don't know what items really do, pick one type of build and stick with it until the end of the match. Here's my personal build, but now, moving on to the downsides of Artemis. The main downside of Artemis is she does not have an escape, and if you're not too careful about your positioning, you will get destroyed. To mitigate this, make sure you use your traps and your ultimate. But let's move on to Assassins. For Assassins, I can recommend Bastet. She's really simple and actually a lot of fun. Bastet has the ability to jump into a battle and deal damage. And then you could hit that same ability again and jump back to the spot you were at originally. This is great for new players to help develop game sense, learning when you should go into an engagement and when you should leave. And if you happen to mess up, you could always just jump back to your original location. And I have even got into Bastet's passive, where she inflicts bleed damage through abilities or basic attacks, which is really strong early game and can help you get ahead and win, potentially. When building Bastet, you want to build items that increase your ability damage or give you lifesteal through ability damage. Now, good examples are Crusher, Soul Eater, and Heartseeker. Other things you want to build on Bastet is cooldown, so you could spam your abilities more. Good items for that are Jotun's Wrath, Breastplate of Valor, and Hydra of the Laminate. Let's talk about Bastet's downside. Bastet is simple and therefore predictable. She's a one-trick pony, and once people figure out the trick, well, it's really easy to counter. You could use Bastet's jump against her. From the warrior class, I can recommend Chaac. He has a lot of crowd control in his kit and can heal himself constantly in a fight. For a warrior, he does a lot of damage and has an annoying ultimate with a pretty big range. He even has an escape, sorta. When he throws his 1, he's able to teleport it with his 2 when it hits the ground. This requires a little bit of setup, but it is an escape. When building Chaac, you want to get items that give you protections, physical power, and cooldowns, preferably all of them. Items that work really well on Chaac are Rune Forged Hammer, Glad Shield, Breastplate of Valor, and also any item that increases your ability damage is good to have on Chaac, like Heartseeker or Jotun's Wrath. Just be careful, you want to find the perfect blend between damage and protections because you are technically supposed to be a tank. My personal build looks like this, but moving on to the downsides of Chaac. Chaac's mana consumption is really bad, especially early game, but for most of the game it will be a limiting factor. Also, Chaac's healing can be reduced by the enemy team by buying items. And, like Bastet, your escape can be easily predicted. A way to counteract this is to throw an obvious hammer and use it to bait the enemy to where they would think you would teleport to and just run the opposite direction, preferably to safety. For the Guardian class, I can recommend Atlas. Atlas brings a lot of utility to the team, a lot of hard crowd control, and is a very good Guardian overall. But his most annoying ability can pick up enemies, hold them, and throw them in whatever direction you're facing, which is fatal if executed correctly. Atlas can even clear lane, which is awesome because most Guardians struggle to clear lane even later into the game. Things you should build on Atlas: anything that gives you a bunch of protections and HP, for example, Gauntlet of Thebes, Manticore Spike, and Mail of Renewal. You also want to get any items that give you aura effects that assist your team, like Emperor's Armor, Sovereignty, and Pestilence, to name a few. As the tank of the team, you want to be the damage sponge that eats ridiculous amount of damage to buy time for your team to escape or to throw enemies out of position. The downsides of Atlas are his awful cooldowns on his abilities. He also has terrible mana consumption, which can be mitigated through potions or ymits. Also, to play Atlas the most effectively requires a decent bit of skill or game sense. So if Atlas is too hard for you to play, then you could play Ymir, which is also a top tier when it comes to support. I just prefer Atlas because he is just a really good Guardian overall. It is the end of the video. If you guys like this type of content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And this took a decent amount of time to make, so I hope you guys really enjoy this video. See you guys later.